Hey, welcome back to week 2 of the Draftstars NFL Show. Smatho and McCary Guy are back here for Draftstars NFL contests. A $50,000 prize pool is coming up for this week. McCary Guy, thanks for joining, mate, on the show. Great to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Smatho. Good to be back.
Now, as I said, a little backstage before we started, there's a couple of winners here on the stream today. We don't want to grab our trumpets out and blow it too hard, but mate, congratulations on winning the week 1 Draftstar Slate from last week. How does it feel to be a winner with some play money for the rest of the season?
Can't be a better way to start the season, that's for sure. It was a great feeling. It was a lineup that kind of didn't look very good until the last 10, 15 minutes. So just a short, sharp sweat at the end. It was lovely.
It was lovely. Obviously, I'm not here to boast anything, but I didn't mind picking up a chop first win in the showdown on Monday Night Football. So, yeah, we're a couple of winners here, just catching up. So, it can only go downhill from here, mate. So
that's right. It was only about a 13-way chop, wasn't it?
That's only 13. prefer a little bit less, but hey, when you play the nuts, you get the nuts. So,
right.
But anyway, Now every week we're going to do a bit of a shout out to the winners from each particular slate, and obviously having you here to talk about your particular slide. Obviously, you'll talk about other people's sides throughout the year. Well, hopefully you will, because can't be seen winning the draft star slates all the time. But let's bring up your side from week 1. Talk me through it, because there are some players that we did talk about in the show last week, and obviously some little darts as well. So how'd you go with this one?
Yeah, well, a few plays that you were keen on yourself there in Jalen Hurts, Gibson, I believe, and the Dolphins defense. So thanks for that. Stacked Devonta Smith with Hurts. Tried to run it back with Kyle Pitts, which didn't work out so well, but everyone was on him, so that was okay. And then, yeah, guys that I was keen on last week in Hopkins and Tyreek Hill both went nuts for me. That was great. And just, yeah, a little sneaky Melvin Gordon and Deebo Samuel, who both just snuck in there without too much thought, really.
Also, you played a few injuries last week. I'll go to the player board, because obviously there were some chalk that didn't really go well. And look at the first two there with Russell Gage and Raheem Mostert. Now, Mostert had an excuse. Obviously, he hurt himself, and that sunk 34% of the lineups. But what happened to old Russell?
I didn't even see him on the field, but apparently he got a couple of targets. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. All the top 5 most popular plays all busted, so that really opened up the slate a lot.
Now, I had a lot of Jacksonville Jaguars. -3 wasn't exactly in the script. And what also wasn't exactly in the script was one of my teams did have Odell Beckham Jr. Now, my top tip for this week, now obviously I talked about the flex play last week, which is obviously that's fine. But top tip, when you set an alarm at approximately, 5:45, 6 a.m. to make sure you get the second wave games, you actually wake up to it. So, yeah, if you're going to commit to something, make sure you do it well. Funny enough, I had Gage, Jaguars, and Odell Beckham in the lineup, and it still cashed because I had the Holmes, Tyreek Hill stack, and that pretty much scored half of my points in a particular team. But so you, Tom, congratulations on that first place, $4,000 in the kitty. Now, obviously, $50,000 this week means a mega first prize this week, so obviously you won't be the highest winning Blake this season. So let's move on to week 2. As I mentioned, we've got a 50k contest here, so let me bring up the old promo for Draftstars. Obviously, Draftstars are Australia's #1 daily fantasy platform if you want to play your NFL daily fantasy in Australia. $4,935 for first prize. Kickoff again is at 3 a.m. and it's going to cost you $15 per entry there. Now, we've got another 13 games on the slate, 9 early, 4 of the late window again. And so if I bring up the old board here for you, Tom, you can immediately look at your eyes towards the last 4 games of the slate, which are in the late window. We've got totals here are all over 50. So how are you going to tackle this particular slate, this one? And any sneaky little plays that you want to look at there, and from a betting perspective, because obviously, did you hit last week on your bets?
Yeah, my bet last week was the Dolphins. Got up by 1 point, so good
Yeah,
start.
my Packers.
Wow. Yeah, in terms of the slate, yeah, as you said, the last 4 games are easily the highest total shootout games. There's not a lot in the early games that I love. Like, yeah, nothing there at all, really, for me. Carolina Panthers maybe was one. If Jameis Winston can repeat last week's form and turn the game into a shootout somehow, but it's not that appealing for me.
Yeah, Panthers only +3 there. That's not a bad angle there. What do you reckon from a punting perspective? Who you laying the flag on this week?
Yeah, I'll go the same one, the Panthers. Probably more of a punting thing than a fantasy thing this week, definitely.
I'm liking the Chargers at -3 in the late game. I think Dallas's defense is just about not cooked, but they haven't really learned from last year. Look, injuries and COVID have hurt, but yeah, -3 for the Chargers. I think they can get over the line from there. All right. Now, we're here on Sunday morning. We'll always check the injury news. We got a bit of injury news this week. So, out this week, Odell Beckham, Will Fuller, Josh Jacobs from the Raiders, who played on Monday Night Football, he's out. Jerry Jeudy for the Broncos, he's out as well. So, there are 3 receivers and 1 running back that could influence your fantasy sides this week. Rashad Penny and Eskridge from the Seahawks are doubtful. And then questionable ones where you might have to check out the team news before the slate locks, including Keegan Cole, Jamison Crowder, Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, Preston Williams, the NFL guy, not the other one, Gabriel Davis, Furska, Schwartz, and Darnell Mooney. Now, these guys are not really that fantasy stud-like players, but they can influence your particular teams. Is there any there that could influence your decisions in this particular slate?
I think Jacobs is the only one that matters too much. That gives Kenyon Drake potentially a shot at kind of a bell cow role, or he could just get a slightly bigger workload with a backup like Peyton Barber working in behind him. So, yeah, that one opens up Kenyon Drake. Other than that, most of those situations haven't changed from last week anyway. So I think it's kind of all the same.
Just a quick question before I bring up the Draftstars lobby and that. Any of those week 1 performances mean that we have to change our mindset on players that we thought were pretty big on preseason, or do you still kind of just back them in after having probably some poor week 1s?
Individual players, I think you just back them in. Like, you can't judge off one game. Maybe a couple of the teams that were a lot worse than we expected, you can be a little bit more worried about, I think. Titans, especially.
Yeah. Yes, I was pretty disappointed to see what they dished up last week. So that could be a bit of a theme for this particular slate this week. So let's get stuck into it. $50,000, 3 a.m. You can get 150 entries in if you so desire. And I said 4,900 first prize. Then, as always, we'll go through each position. We'll start at quarterback. Now, my notes here tell me I don't want to start at the top. I want to go right down the bottom straight away, because we were pretty keen on Trevor Lawrence last week. Obviously, his team didn't do well, but in terms of fantasy, he actually went really well last week. As I still scroll down, here we go. Oh, sorry. I need to scroll through the whole field there. No wonder I didn't see him. Where is he? Yes, right down the bottom. You find pass. There he is. Zach, there we go. 10,430. Produced a 25 fantasy point performance through 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions as well. So he comes up against Denver Broncos, which your Broncos are a stout defense, but at 10,430, could he smash value against these quarterbacks this week?
He could. Not definitely, but it's a pretty solid kind of cash game play, I think. Most likely going to need to throw the ball quite a lot, even against the tough defense. So, yeah, he could, but I think the Jaguars were one of the teams we can be a bit worried about from last week. I think they looked a bit worse than I expected. So I'm just not sure about the whole environment of that game for him.
All right, well, let's move up. Derek Carr played pretty well at 10,690 against the Ravens. Obviously, majority scoring came that last quarter, which was a pretty epic quarter in the end. He threw for 400 yards, 2 touchdowns, rushed for 6 yards. Pittsburgh, again, another defense that notoriously hard to go against, but another cheap price here for Derek Carr.
Yeah, yes, but not cheap enough for me, quite. Like, there's a lot of better plays, I think.
Fair enough.
And could be a kind of grinding game and tough defense. He needs a lot to go right to work out.
All right, let me scroll up then. Obviously, we got this this condensed range between $13,000 and $11,000 here. Any of these tackle your fancy before we move up to the top of the board?
Well, I'm surprised Jalen Hurts got cheaper after what we saw last week. Yeah, much tougher matchup this week, but what he can do with his legs, it's tough to beat. So, yeah, I think he's too cheap.
Do you reckon he'd be popular?
Yeah, I'm not sure. The matchup is pretty scary, so that could keep a lot of people off him.
All right. Now, also, you mentioned in your article on Daily Fantasy Rankings, you really like the stud guys this week. We start here at Kyler Murray at 15,690. Wilson played pretty well at 15,520 last week. He's up against the Titans. Could be a smash spot here for Russell. Josh Allen looking to bounce back against the Dolphins at 14,720. And then the game that everyone seems to be targeting this week, we've got the Chargers and the Cowboys there, 14,250 for Dak. And Justin Herbert is $20 cheaper at 14,230. Who you like here? Are you loving the stack talk with the Chargers and the Cowboys, or do you want to get away from it?
Well, first of all, you left out Tom Brady.
Yes, I did too.
In the big pack there, he's just finally hit his fantasy peak in his career. So great play. But for the Chargers Dallas game, yeah, easily the most exciting game of the week. Both teams just throwing the ball downfield as much as they can. Defenses, well, Dallas terrible defense, and the Chargers isn't much better. So yeah, I do love that game. We'll see as we go through the other positions. Draftstars have priced everyone in that game up a fair way. So you have to be creative if you want to stack those quarterbacks.
Any love for Murray or Wilson? If you have the cash, I guess.
Yeah, why not? They're both amazing. I like Josh Allen. I think the Miami matchup could scare some people, although I'm not sure if people realize how good their defense is. But yeah, I'm interested in Josh Allen for sure.
Excellent. All right. A few there to consider, but obviously, yeah, I reckon either Lawrence, Hurts, and that top 6 up here is probably the ones that you want to be looking at this week. Let's move on to the running backs. Now, first question I want to ask you. He's not, as you see, he's not in here. You have to scroll down. It's Derrick Henry, 12,640. Only 10.7 fantasy points last week. He did catch 3 balls, but only rushed 58 yards. Obviously, they found themselves behind pretty early in that particular game. But look at that price, 12,640. So that's now mid-tier. That's not stud-like. You gonna have a go at him, or are we just gonna say let everyone else have him? Because he has the potential just to go cocoa bananas.
Yeah, well, I think I put him in my article last week, talked him up on the show, and he busted. I put him in my article again this week, and I'm just going to talk him up on the show again. Far too cheap. Have to hope that everyone's scared of what the Titans put up last week, and that it was, just an off week. And no matter what the game script, I just think he can bust off a big play at any time. So, yeah, at that price, I'm going to play a lot of Henry.
All right. Well, let's go back towards the top of the board. Christian McCaffrey's back there at 19,670 again. Again, there's quite a significant price difference back to Alvin Kamara at 17,890. Eckler, 16,550. Dalvin Cook there, it's 15,950. And Nick Chubb at 14,800 for the Browns. Najee Harris didn't get really going, but he played a lot of snaps last week at 13,700. So, and just below them is Joe Mixon. Bit of shout out to him. He is one of our players last week, and he came through the goods with us with a 28-point performance. So, out of the top of the board, it looks like Christian McCaffrey's starting to get a little bit more appealing. He's got a high floor. Ceiling is going to be excellent here. A New Orleans matchup, which is not really a scary one. Obviously, they did give the Packers a bit of a touch-up last week. So, what are your thoughts on CMC this week?
I'm just glad he didn't burn me too badly last week after I talked him down, because I've realized that the amount of usage he gets isn't changing anytime soon. And I think you can pay any price for him the way he gets used. So I'm definitely endorsing him this week.
Excellent. Who else on the top of the board you're looking at here?
I think Dalvin Cook is a bit too cheap as well. I think Arizona's defense gained a lot of respect last week, but I don't know if we can trust it yet. So, too cheap for his usage also. And it'll be tough. I think Nick Chubb will be pretty chalky against the Texans. But yeah, he's every chance to, score 2-3 touchdowns. So it's a good play.
Are you worried about having his fellow running back who could be sniping all of the goal line work? Kareem Hunt, I was talking about. He's at 11,330, and obviously he had not a bad week last week too. Ended up catching 3 balls, rushed the TD, 17 points there against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a slight concern, but I think the Browns are just going to smash the Texans. So there's enough room for both of them.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about the situation at the Raiders. Now, you said you were pretty keen on them as a defense also, which means you need to run it back, as they say, with a running back. Josh Jacobs, he looked pretty bad last week. Looked pretty proper, but still managed to rush in 2 touchdowns. So we get some min price guys here in Keenan Drake at 8,000. He scored 12 fantasy points last week, mainly through the air. There's 5 receptions there for 59 yards. And then they've got Peyton Barber there, which is the third line running back. He'll probably get all the bell cow work to start with. They'll probably keep Drake as that receiving back. So if you were to choose one of these guys, would you prefer Drake over Barber?
I prefer Drake. He's going to still have that pass catching work, which could be pretty valuable against a tough defense. So, yeah.
You're pretty keen on that one. All right, let's have a look at any other cheap guys that we could look at on the board here. Anyone that pops for you this week?
Now that Drake's there, I'm less interested in anyone in between the top guys and him. There was one. Nyheim Hines is one I was kind of interested in. Tough matchup with the Rams. They, quite likely will be trailing and trying to dump the ball off a lot for a lot of the game. So, yeah, I think he's a good play.
Other ones that caught my eye is the situation at the 49ers as well. We've lost Mostert, obviously, to injury last week. So Elijah Mitchell has been touted as getting the majority of the work this week. He did score 19.4 after Mostert went down, obviously with 100 yards and a TD there. He's not mid-price. He's at 10,000, but could you consider Mitchell against this matchup against Philly?
Yeah, you can consider it. He looked good. I think any running back looks good in the 49ers scheme. But yeah, I mean, I think Trey Sermon's going to come in and take some work. Jermichael Hasty got a fair share of the work last week. So yeah, it's not a play I love, but I might play a little bit of it.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's move on to wide receivers. Now, obviously, we talked about pairing your quarterbacks all the time, and obviously the Cowboys and Chargers are going to take center stage here. Now, Michael Gallup is gone for the Cowboys for a few weeks, so that obviously brings opportunities for Cooper and Cedric Wilson, who got a little bit of work late in the game last week. So if you're going to stack the Cowboys, are you considering both receivers or just the one to start with?
Considering multiple receivers, yeah. Cooper and Lamb can both do anything on any given week, and Cedric Wilson, I think, is going to be a pretty good play at minimum price. There's definitely enough room there to stack two of them and bring it back with the Chargers player probably also.
All right. If you're going to bring it back with Chargers, who are you looking at on that side of the ball? Obviously, Keenan Allen is the star there, but obviously Mike Williams there at 11,310 probably will get into some lineups due to that price, and obviously his 22 fantasy points from last week.
Yeah, he looked great last week. He was talked up in the offseason as playing a new role with the new coaching setup at the Chargers. And yeah, it looked like he did kind of play that role. He wasn't just a deep threat. They were kind of trying to get him the ball like short areas and in the red zone, which is, a big upgrade for him. So I think he'll be a great player.
Now, unfortunately, I missed about Tom Brady before. Now, obviously, that game was ludicrous the start of the year. Everyone popped for 100-yard rushing, touchdowns and stuff like that. So can you see another Tampa Bay smash job against the Falcons, which were obviously they were pretty poor last week?
It relies a lot on the Falcons playing better, keeping the game close, which I don't know. Like history says they probably can, but they were so bad last week. New coaching setup and Matt Ryan as a 37-year-old quarterback or whatever he is didn't look good at all. So the game is less exciting for that reason, but I still think all of Godwin, Evans, Brown, and even Gronkowski, who we'll get to later, could easily be great players.
I'm just looking at here. Where's the other receivers here? They didn't get a touch last week. It's just the core three plus Gronkowski last week, which is quite amazing. All right, let's have a look at our other options. I do like Stephon Diggs in a bounce back. We're obviously pairing up with Josh Allen. If you'd run with him, he's at 15,850. Obviously, you hit with DeAndre Hopkins last week. Seattle options there, Lockett and Metcalf both at 15,000. So that's going to be a bit of a hard work jamming both of those guys in. As I start scrolling down, Calvin Ridley, if we get that match up with the Bucks, hopefully if they can stay with him, he's going to be in a great spot at $14,200. Any of those are guys above 14,000 that you want to hit on as well?
I'll go risky and pick Ridley. Surely no one's playing him after what happened last weekend against the Bucks. So, that's kind of your lower end play that I think could go off. Excellent.
All right, as I scroll down, any of these guys here in that mid-range from around 10K to around 12.5, 13K that you kind of like here? Or you kind of just like, meh, not to this week?
Yeah, a little bit meh. Maybe another risky one in Julio Jones in a similar setup to what we just talked about with Ridley. We know how big his ceiling is, so that could be one to play.
Just notice here, Odell Beckham's out, so does that give some opportunities to Jarvis Landry at 12,940?
Gives him more opportunity, but the price is a bit too high for me regardless. I think Cleveland probably just run the ball in a lot, so his ceiling might not be there.
All right. Any of the mid-price stuff that you're quite keen on this week? I'll type them in for you so we can have a look at them.
Don't know about mid-price. There's a few kind of minimum price punts that I don't mind.
Yep.
Zach Pascal after he went off last week is one. His teammates are all still questionable, so he could have a big role. Who else don't I mind? Just lost the other one. Cedric Wilson's the other one that we already talked about that I think, could be a good play.
I've got one here from the Rams who did pop for a large touchdown last week. Van Jefferson. There he is at mid-price. He did go off at 16, only the 2 balls, but an 80 there and a touchdown. So against the Colts, he could be another deep threat there for me as well. Davis, after he went pretty well last week as well, 12 points there. He's still questionable, but if he can get in, he's another min-price guy that probably no one will click on his name there for us. Any other guys before we move on?
No, that's about it. Yeah, I had both those guys, and they both have kind of upside roles, but can easily put up a 0 as well. So you just have to be careful there.
All right. First question for you, tight end, before we move on to the normal guys. Is there any options in that Cowboys-Chargers game that we could look at for a real mega stack, or are we getting a little bit carried away?
Why not? Jared Cook, I believe he got a pretty big share of the targets last week. He's not done yet at 34 apparently, so he could be, quite a good addition to those stacks.
And then we've got here, Dalton Schultz actually went not too bad as well. We've got 6 receptions there for 45 as well. So if you can get in the end zone at 5,700 as well, they are looking pretty juicy. But let's move on to the other guys. Now, obviously, Darren Waller had an exceptional game there against the Ravens. He's there at 12,740. George Kittle didn't really get going last week, 11,690. Noah Fant at 10,200. But the guy we all talked up last week was Kyle Pitts at 9,470. As they say in the classics, are we back in the truck up on Pitts again in this matchup against the Bucks?
Yes, but tentatively. Yeah, I think if the Falcons team bounces back, he was on the field enough and was targeted enough to be a good play. But it's still his second career game, so I'm still pretty worried about it.
If you are worried about it, who else do we want to be looking at around that price range? Because there's one guy below him and one guy above him that could be popular.
Yeah, I think Tyler Higbee's a great play. He might be pretty popular. I think despite going off last week, Gronkowski is the one that might not be so popular. Just being older and people kind of thinking it was a fluke last week. He did get 8 targets. He caught them all, and he looked pretty involved. The other Bucks tight ends didn't play at all, so I think his big role could continue.
Now, I've got here Noah Fant here, 10,200 as well. Why is he priced up at this particular price range that he's more expensive than these other blokes here?
Possibly something to do with Jerry Jeudy going down and expecting a bigger role. Yeah, which he will have a bigger role, but I think with Teddy Bridgewater as quarterback, probably just going to be kind of safe, short targets, working their way down the field methodically rather than his usual big upside role. So I kind of think that's a bit too expensive.
Excellent. I don't really have many below him. Also, we did talk about Chargers, Cowboys, but nothing really there stands out for me on a cheaper scale. No. So no, I wouldn't be bothering these guys. If you don't have the cash, then probably look at your Cooks, etc. But you probably want to be targeting the top probably 8 of these guys on the board here. Let's move on to the last position, and obviously this is going to be the hardest one of the week because obviously we crashed and burned with how Jager was playing last week, thinking, just play the Texans, go against the Texans. And obviously Draftstars were listening to us last week and just going, no, you won't be having that anymore because we've priced up the Browns at 9,050. You can't be playing a defense special teams at 9,050. Surely can't you, Tom? Tell me that you can't do that.
No, you definitely can't do that ever. Yeah, and especially the Texans kind of looked okay last week. I don't think it's going to last, but you can't be doing that.
Can't be doing it. All right, so let's have a look at the options here. Patriots then lead at 7,740 against the Jets, who are kind of a bit banged up already. Bucks over Atlanta. I'm not sure about that particular one, but one I'm liking straight away is the Broncos there at 7,510. Yeah, the Jaguars have a quarterback finding his new way. Could be throwing some picks, things like that. Is that enough money to pay up for the Broncos?
It got a bit more expensive from where they were last week, and I have a lot more faith in Trevor Lawrence than Daniel Jones. So it's going to be a no for me this week.
All right. Well, okay. Well, who do you like this week in terms of defense special teams?
Yeah, it's hard to really love anyone. They've priced it pretty well. I think my favorite play is the Raiders right down the bottom.
Oh.
I wrote the Rams up actually in my article. I think they, against the shaky Carson Wentz, could be a good play. But the Raiders, Max Crosby on their defensive line was wreaking havoc against Lamar Jackson last week. And yeah, just based on that alone, I'm keen to play the Raiders at minimum price.
Yeah, the Ravens front line is pretty good. And obviously the amount of times that the Raiders were able to pressure Jackson and that running line, yeah, that's pretty good there at 4,000. Yes, you did mention about the Rams. I like them this week. I have to go back up here. They're at 5,960. Not sure the Colts are the real deal with Carson Wentz. I think he'll probably want to impress, but with that 3 sacks, 1 interception, fumbles last week. They did it all. Got some great weapons there on the Rams team. So, and I think that price is pretty good. So, but as for the rest of them, you could probably close your eyes and throw a dart at them. But yeah, I wouldn't be terribly looking at the higher end of the board this week. All right. It's now that time of the show. Now, after the success of the pool party last week, it's become a bit of a ticketed item for the pool party. I've managed to increase capacity limits this week after having a select few for week 1. So let's roll the videotape first of all. Yeah, in Smatho's pool party this week, including at quarterback, I've gone the Brady, Prescott, Herbert, Hurts kind of chalky kind of plays. Lawrence at a cheap price on Draftstars. I think if you're struggling, if you want to get into more studs elsewhere, Lawrence is pretty good. At running back, we are back in the truck up on Henry, Henderson, Drake, Chubb, Davis, McCaffrey, Hines, and Melvin Gordon. If you can pop again. At wide receiver, what a party we have here. So we got Cooper, Lamb, Wilson from the Cowboys, Allen, Williams from the Chargers. I've got Deebo Samuel from the 49ers, Jefferson from the Rams, Diggs, Mike Evans, Godwin, Brown, all from the Bucks there, and Calvin Ridley hopefully in a bounce back spot. If we go over the page, the tight end, I'm going to go with Gronk again. I think those amount of targets are sensational. Darren Waller, Pitts, Higbee, Nolan Fant, and as we've discussed, we've talked about the Rams, the Broncos, and the Raiders. So, Tom, any final tips for this week's slate for that $50,000 massive prize pool? What are you looking for in your final thoughts this week?
I think from what we just went through, you can see that it might just be a game of how many pass catches from the late games can you get in your lineup. All those high total games, there's going to be a couple of shootouts in there. So I think it's largely just about trying to get the biggest stack you can from those late games.
Excellent. Now, you can catch Tom's article on dailyfantasyrankings.com.au. His mega preview is now live on the site. Make sure you catch us every week on Draftstar socials, including Facebook and Twitter. And then you can also find us on our Daily Fantasy Rankings YouTube page for the replay. We'll be back for week 3, hopefully in some sort of a state after the AFL Grand Final. So just roll out of bed and catch us on midday next week, and we'll get you through week 3 of the NFL. All right, Tom, thanks for joining me, mate, for this week, and we'll catch you next week.
Thank you, Smatho. See you then.
All right, see you then. Good luck to your teams. See you then.